Welcome to All Chalk, a podcast about the power of education to help young people speak up and build a fairer world. My name's Greg, founder of Smart School Councils, and in today's episode we're heading overseas for the first time to speak with the amazing Louise Russell, a primary teacher at the British International School in Budapest, Hungary. Louise's journey is really interesting and maybe not so uncommon, actually, from being kind of dumped with the school council with a big folder saying, here's how you do it, in that sort of traditional small group of voices involved, to something much better, where the impact is more genuine, more inclusive, and an approach that I guess genuinely meets the needs of her really diverse community in her school, which I think has over sort of 70 nationalities represented. So if you're a school and you want to get involved, just search for Smart School Councils or visit us at smartschoolcouncils.org, and we would love to tell you a little bit more. So without further ado, let's hear from the inspiring Louise Russell and her journey. Thanks very much for listening. Louise, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Hi, I'm really well, thank you. Yes.
Fantastic.
It's a festive, fun time of year.
Yes, fantastic. I realise that we're chatting in the run-up to Christmas, so I'm very appreciative of your time because I know things will be a little bit manic. Do you want to tell us, just to start, a little bit about kind of you and your school, Louise? It'd be really great to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been teaching for over 20 years now. I went to university in the north of England and then got a job in Leeds. So I was working in Leeds city centre initially, and then kind of heard about these magical places called international schools where you could work but also see some of the world as well. And that's when I got a position at the British International School in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. Having never kind of stepped out of Europe, I was excited to explore somewhere else in the world, and I haven't really looked back. So that was in 2003, and I'm now at the British International School in Budapest. And for anyone who knows Budapest, the city is split in two. So you've got Buda on one side of the Danube River, and you've got Pest on the other side, which is the kind of downtown area. And our school is in on the Buda side, sort of in the kind of more suburban, leafy areas of the city.
Amazing. So straight into international schools. And I guess I was thinking about this before I was going to chat to you this morning, Louise, was I've never actually been in an international school. I've been to hundreds of schools over the years, but I've never been in an international school. And I guess this isn't me angling for an invite, but I'm curious as to what might be new or different compared to other schools that people might think of.
Yeah, I mean, because we're a British school, we have to obviously adhere to certain standards, and we follow the British curriculum in terms of our English and our maths. But then we have a little bit more flexibility, particularly when it comes to some of our other subjects. We have to make sure that we're not too Anglo-centric because our students come from all over the world. I mean, in our school, which ranges from students who are 3 years old to 18. I can't remember what the last count was of countries that are represented. I think it hovers around 60 or 70, but it's a huge number of countries which are represented, and that just makes it a really fascinating place to work. And I feel like I'm learning every day from my own students because they come from such different cultures. It's so diverse, and the languages. Obviously, a lot of our children are, bilingual or trilingual, which, I mean, as a Brit who is, pretty terrible at languages, is just absolutely astounding. And yeah, I'm just everything about the diverse nature of it. And it's got its drawbacks as well. Of course, it's a very transient community because obviously families may come and go depending on contracts, which could be just 2 or 3 years long. So it's always heartbreaking when you have close friends and good members of the community who move on. But then there's always the excitement of the change as well, and new people coming to join us. So Yeah, it's a really it's a great environment to be part of.
That's amazing. And have you satisfied your, because it feels a long way from Leeds city centre, have you satisfied your need for travel and different cultures?
Don't know that you ever do satisfy your need for travel. Once you kind of dip your toes in and you start exploring other parts of the world, there's still a huge amount of the world which I haven't explored and I'd still love to see. But certainly at the moment, Budapest is home for me, and I've been here for a long time now. So this feels right. So for the moment, this is home.
That's fab. Oh, it's great to hear. Thank you. And an interesting journey from Vietnam as well. We'll have to talk about that at some point as well. Where were you starting with pupil voice and school councils? Like, was this a job that you were kind of dumped with, or was it something you volunteered for, or like, where did you start with that?
I'm so glad you used the word dumped there because yeah, if I'm honest, that's how it started off.
Okay.
So it was a few years ago that I went for the PSHE lead in the school, and it was shortly after getting that lead. The teacher who was currently running the student council, she was leaving the school, and so it just seemed to make sense to everyone that it should come to me as the PSHE lead and that I should take it on. And I mean, our student council back then, I think it was just like any other student council I'd seen, and like many that still operate. It's a very sort of traditional school model where you've got a group of elected students who then represent the whole school, and those students you would meet once a week, and they would be ever so eager and excited at the beginning of the year to have been elected and chosen for this, these special meetings. But of course, it dwindled, and then there's just like really a handful of dominant voices that were the ones who were representing the school and sort of making the decisions, and kind of felt like it just wasn't meeting the needs of our very diverse community and student body. And their meetings, were very regular at the beginning of the year, but they would sort of peter off towards the end of the year and ended up becoming more and more sporadic. And it wasn't always clear what impact they were having or what decisions were being made. And they tried ever so hard, that little group, and they did have some small successes, they really did. But I just felt in terms of meeting the needs of our student body, it wasn't quite there. And at that, I didn't know, if I'm honest, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was handed this folder from the teacher who was running student council. And she said, look, it's actually really hard. It's pretty tough. It takes out your lunch break. And you need to kind of really, keep them motivated. And it was like, good luck. And I thought, God, there's got to be another way. And then it was a case of me sort of sitting down and thinking, well, what do I do? What can I do that I can maintain as well? Because I'm a full-time classroom teacher as well as having curriculum responsibilities, etc. And it's got to be something that isn't going to completely wipe out my time as well, but is also going to have some sort of impact. Um, yeah, and then I found you guys.
Yeah. Wow, what a setup. I'm trying to picture what was in that big folder, whether it was kind of the whole years of minutes kind of thing.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, they've been very thorough, this little group, and I don't want to diminish, what they've done
Yeah.
because they've really tried. I think, that teacher also, like me, had not seen another way of doing student council effectively, and this was the only way that she knew how and the students knew how, and we hadn't really explored another way.
Yeah, that's it. And it's sort of replicating some of those old style business things that you see, like
Yeah,
you like
that's it.
where this year do you see people taking minutes with like handwritten minutes and then filing them in a folder? Like it just doesn't
Yeah,
really happen. It's
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's not, it's not your colleague's fault because that's probably the
No,
system that
absolutely.
he or she was handed also. So yeah, it's not meant to criticize them. But um, so what did you do? What was next, Louise?
So a lot of Googling initially as to, what's out there, what can I do, what are other schools doing? There's got to be another way. So it's a case of kind of going on forums and looking online and just seeing, what else is there out there that we can do that has more impact and is more effective. And that's when I found Smart Student Council, and immediately I could see that this was something that would have huge benefit, and that we could, and this is one of the most important things, that we could implement easily within the school without putting a lot on the staff. Because, like all teachers, I mean, it's no different here as it is in the UK or other schools around the world. Teachers are under a huge amount of pressure, and the workload just seems to grow. And so to find something that looked like we could implement it quite easily, and it would run, particularly the fact that it's run by students, was really appealing, because we're really for student leadership as well, and student empowerment. So the fact that students could lead this was something that was really exciting. So yeah, my next step was then to get in touch with you guys and find out more. And that's when obviously we met, when I came to do the training back in the UK quite a few years ago now.
Yeah, I remember it was very soon into just starting the charity, and
Yeah.
I distinctly remember it because it was when we were still doing our in-person courses, and it was early July, and there was a
Yeah.
bunch of other teachers there who were
Yeah.
sort of desperate to get on their summer break, and I think you'd already broken up because
Yeah.
your holidays are different, and they were
That's
all
right.
very
We break up
jealous.
earlier. Yeah, that's right. We break up earlier, and a lot of international schools go back in August. So I was already on holiday, so I was very chilled and ready for learning. Yeah, and you're right. I think there were some teachers who were having to deal with sports days and things going on, at
Yeah.
the end of their term. Yeah.
And and that was where you kind of like we met and we talked
Yeah.
about kind of the approach and what did you do after then? I'm keen to
Yeah.
kind of step by step what you
Yeah.
did when you went back to school.
So, oh, sorry, let me just take the phone off the hook.
Don't worry, it wouldn't be a school
I
podcast
know.
without the phone going or someone coming in
A
with it.
phone or a child coming in. So for me, the first thing was really to get the staff on board. And because I'd come to see you, and I had the training, and I'd had the summer holidays to kind of think about how I was going to do that. When we started right at the very beginning of the year, when you have those couple of inset days before kids are in, it gave me an opportunity to talk to the staff, and we did a session with them about how we can empower our students and how everyone can develop their communication skills through using this new student council. And I have to say, I've got really supportive staff, and staff who have got on board with this, and they've been brilliant. So that was my first step, really, is educating the staff on what we did, had some successes, but we can do something else, we can do something better, getting them on board and getting them excited. The next step was to do the same with the students as well. So I didn't want to just leap into it and start our new student council straight away in the first couple of weeks of school. I wanted to make sure that children fully understood what it was. So that meant taking assembly time, and it meant educating the children what it meant, and getting children to come by my room for meetings if they're interested in learning about some of the leadership roles. So, for example, taking part in the communication team, and getting them excited about it as well, and so they understand fully what the purpose of it is. So we kind of needed to start off with our why and make sure everyone understood why we're doing it, and how we were going to go about it. So once we felt in a good position to start, it was then a case of going small, really, and we had our communication team apply for the role back then. Actually, nowadays, because we've been running this for quite a few years, the students know what it involves, and usually when they come in, we only take from year 5 and year 6 upwards, because they're at an age where they can deal with that level of responsibility. So usually when they come to year 5, they do come and visit me and say, can I be part of the communication team? I'm year 5 now, I'm ready. So I actually end up with quite a committed group who've seen the process and seen what the communication do for a few years now. So we started small. So we got our communication team together, and we had just initially just a few meetings with them about how we were going to run and what roles everyone would take. And I'll be honest, it wasn't easy at first.
Yeah.
For the first 2 or 3 years, the communication team needed a lot of support and input. But gradually, as the children have got older and the year fives move into year six, they support the ones that come into year five, and they're much more comfortable in what it is that they do now. So I think over time it's got easier. And then once we felt ready with our communication team and the staff were aware of what it was about and the students were ready, we then put out our first couple of questions.
Okay.
And we started with things that were really small. So things like, where should we put our communication board? So our communication board, which explains what's going on and what the action teams, where do we put it in the school? And so we wanted to kind of demonstrate to the children how the student council works, and that they all have a vote, and that their votes can then have an impact on what happens. And so we quickly wanted to kind of build some trust with the children at the beginning with just really small little measures that were completely achievable, that we could do very quickly, and then they can see how their voice can have an impact and can make some sort of change.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess thanks for explaining that. That's really helpful. When you were explaining it to the children, because obviously you're in a primary, how were you describing the difference, like from the old system to the new system? And when you talk about questions, for those of people who aren't familiar with what a question is and how that works, how were you describing that to your pupils as well?
Yeah, so we would reflect on what the old student council did and how it was great, and we were so grateful for what those students had done to change things in the school, or had really tried to have an impact. But what we had to say to the children essentially is, but not all of you have had an opportunity to speak. And the children get that. They understand that that their voice isn't heard. And what I should say is that our class meeting, so the question that goes out in class meeting, we're inclusive of everyone from our smallest children in the primary school right up to our year sixes. So we wanted to make sure that the children understood that this new system was a way for them to say how they felt and to vote towards something. Now, what I would say is it's really only in practice that the children fully understood what that meant.
Yeah, okay.
Because for them, and this is all part of the learning process, I think, and why it's so valuable. For them, they voted on something, so surely that's going to happen because it's what they voted for. And
Yeah.
it's a really good lesson on how democracy works, and that sometimes you're in the minority votes. You're in that group that doesn't vote for the change, and that can be really hard. And we've had a couple of one of probably the most controversial kind of things to vote on was something called Football Free Friday, which
Okay.
it was a few years ago. And the way our playground is, we've got some play equipment, but then we've got a large football pitch, and it's dominated by the footballers. But it's really the only place you can run around freely and play tag games without getting tangled up in monkey bars and other people playing on the playing equipment. So we had this idea, and we wanted to put it to the student council to see what they thought. What if we had one day where there's just no football? So Friday would be a no football day, and it meant that football pitch could be taken over with games and gymnastics and whatever the children wanted to do, tag, whatever. And anyway, we put it to the student council to see what they thought, and the children were really for the idea of no football on Friday, and that they'd have that space to play on. However, there were a very small group of very militant students who were very angry about the fact that they couldn't play football every day, because football's one of their big passions and they love it, and they were really gutted that that it was going to be taken away. And I had children coming to my room at break times, can we have football back on Fridays, can we have it back? I had, every time there was like a persuasive writing unit in another class, I would have students writing, oh, I'm going to persuade Mrs. Russell how to to give us back football on a Friday. And that's a really hard lesson for those children to learn. It's like, look, I appreciate that that's something you love, but the majority don't want football on a Friday, or don't want football every day. And we've repeated the question every year, just at the beginning of the year, do they still want to continue football every Friday? Because it does teach, the children that it's hard sometimes when things don't go your way, but it's all about the majority vote, and that's how democracy works. And just like might be a citizen of a country, and you have to deal with a government in power that you didn't necessarily vote for, which is what some people are dealing with in the world right now. That's the way democracy works, and we have to respect that and respect those votes.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe they start to realise that a school is like a living, breathing institution with a range of different views, and maybe that's also quite difficult just when you love football so much. Exactly. You can't understand.
Exactly. And actually, just to finish the story on Football Free Friday, it has actually changed this year. So, and this is a perfect example of how teachers, we assume we know what the children want. And sometimes just to hear the students' voice and to hear them speak, you hear something completely different. And I think that's what's also really valuable. So over the summer holidays, the play space was changed and the football pitch was changed, and things were rearranged outside and restructured. And it meant that we restructured the football pitch and how it's used. So we asked the question at the beginning of the year, and I was fully confident, Football Free Friday will continue. Actually, the voice from the students was, because of the restructuring, we don't play as much football as we did before. We've got more girls who are wanting to play football as well now. It's much more popular, girls football, as a sport now than it was a few years ago. So we've got the girls who now say, actually, we want to play football. We want more time for football too. And so we've had to go back on it this year. And now we do have football every day. But we assumed as teachers that it would just be a majority vote that the students would, again, want to keep that space free on a Friday, but not the case. We don't necessarily know what's best, and they've told us what they want. So
well, it's great you were asking that question year after year. Wow, that's a great example. Thanks, Louise. And just from a kind of being a year 5 teacher's perspective, like when you're as a class teacher, what's happening with those questions in your class? Like, just talk me through what it looks like for your class to take part in that question that the comms team have set.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons why I do like being a class teacher as well, is that you do kind of see what happens in practice, on the ground, so to speak. I mean, I think because it's such an integral part of our school culture, the children look forward to that opportunity to speak and to say something, and it's usually their opportunity to tell us things that need to change, or things that they think need to happen, and to give their opinions. So you can see sometimes they kind of hold on to these these ideas or questions for their class meeting, because they know that this is an opportunity for them to express that in a really safe environment where there's no judgment, and they can say how they feel, and they know it's going to be heard and listened to. I mean, we have and all our classes do, and this is one of the things that we kind of learned early on, is that you've got to put it in the timetable. You've got to make space for it, because if you don't, it's one of those things that can easily be pushed out of the way. So, I'm too busy for this. But if you've got it in your timetable, which is something we did, I think, in our second or third year, then the children know that, hey, this is my time, and why is maths overrunning? Because we should be doing student council now. So I can putting it in the timetable makes a big difference, because then you're less likely to skip over it, and you give it a certain level of status as well, because then you're nestling it in amongst, the maths lesson, the English lesson, their languages lessons, whatever. So it's an important part of the school day, rather than just like an add-on, or just like a one-off thing, or something we do when we've got a little bit of free time here, let's just fit this in here. So I think just doing that and kind of raises the status, and therefore the children see that their voice is important, and that time is precious, and that's important to them. And what I've noticed is, since we've done that, we rarely have classes who skip their meetings now, and when they do, it's usually exceptional circumstances, and we have really good engagement, which is excellent, because it means that more children are taking part.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Did you have a difficult battle to get that slot in that, or that short slot? Because it's not very long, is it?
No,
But
it's really
what was it
not.
like?
No, I think it's just, it was one of those things that you just needed to get there to teachers at the beginning of the year, when everyone's at that point where they're setting up their classroom and they're setting up their timetables. And okay, when you're working out where you're going to put all your lessons, don't forget to put in your student council. And you're right, I've got a 15-minute slot where we do it. And the thing is, the more you do it, the quicker it becomes, because it's got, and that's another great thing, the consistency of it, because the children know, how it works, how it runs, what each slide is going to say in the preparation for the question. You run through that relatively easily. What can hold you up a little bit longer, or take longer than the 15 minutes, is when children have got additional ideas, extra things they want to say. But that's great. And it's not that, I would never want, our teachers to think that that's, we're wasting time, we need to get on to something else, because that is so precious. It's that opportunity for children to debate something, and to discuss, with their peers, what they would do, what their opinions are, what change they see needs to happen. And that collaboration and that problem solving is actually really key. And it's something that we want to really foster and encourage.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, that sounds absolutely fantastic. It's great to hear from your perspective across the school, but also in your classroom as well. So thank you, Louise. What advice would you have for other teachers who maybe who are curious about kind of, or maybe seen some of the holes that you and your pupils identified with their school council, and want to try something new? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think start off with something small, and kind of, reflect on, speaking to the students, like, ask them, what's important to them, what is it that they want to improve, and talking to the staff as well. That's really important, to get them on board with it, and talked about, how can this align with our teaching priorities, and how can we make this manageable, and that's one of the pluses of the student council, is that it is something that's manageable and easy to run. And then I think also asking the questions, like, questioning the leadership team in the school as well, like, how can our school council decisions, how can they influence decisions at a higher level as well, and what resources do we perhaps need for that. So taking some time out to kind of think about what your students want, what your staff need, how you can manage it, and how you can manage change on a kind of greater level across the school.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. That's brilliant. I'm curious, reflecting back on that point at which maybe you were slightly dumped with the role a few years ago, to where you've got to now, and set up this incredible, school council that's involving everybody's voice in your school. How's that journey been then, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it really has been a journey, and we started in 2019, and I should say, like, of course, 2020 and COVID hit, and then we had like a rocky bit of time there with student council, because we were in and out of school. Just like the UK, we were on lockdown, and then even when we did come back the following academic year, we still had periods where some classes were out, or then the whole school was in lockdown for a short period of time. So it was really hard to kind of get our groove with it. So we had a kind of what, after starting like really well and thinking, oh, this is great, we're on a roll with this. COVID hit, and that kind of put brakes on a little. But then we just came back with a renewed vigor, to be honest. And like I said, it's become an integral part of our school culture, and it's not seen as an add-on, or it's not seen as just like a school project. It's just how we ensure generally how our student voice is heard and how it's acted upon. And because every class holds the meetings regularly, it's a process that teachers and I think the students value, because it's just really clear and it's structured, and it's a way that everyone can contribute. So, at this point down the line, I think it has been a journey, but our children at the top of primary school have seen this since they were very young. So for them, it's just what we do. And it's just normal that we listen to other students. And I think one of the things that's really exciting about it is how the children have taken ownership of it. I think our biggest challenge at the moment is the action teams, and I think that's probably one of the biggest struggles for I imagine a lot of schools, because while they're not always successful, they are a place where students they learn to lead, they learn to collaborate, they learn to problem solve, and even when they don't achieve their goals, the students learn resilience and reflection, and they learn how to adapt. And it's amazing to see how they've grown in their confidence with that and their communication skills too. And I think, as a teacher, we have to kind of resist that urge to intervene when you see a student struggling and you just want to jump in and help them. But it's kind of for us as staff, we've also had to kind of rethink things and learn that just by jumping in and trying to solve their problems is actually just undermining their leadership and undermining their confidence. And we have to learn to kind of provide some guidance without taking over. And that's a bit of a shift in mindset for us as well. And celebrating, the effort, not necessarily outcomes, and normalizing the failure and focusing on coaching. And that's something that, I feel I'm still kind of working on now, is, coaching the action teams and asking those open-ended questions. Okay, well, what's your next step? Or, how could your approach be different next time? So that's, in terms of the journey, that's, I think, where we're still learning. But on a very practical level, I think the student council has influenced a wide range of changes in the school. So sustainability initiatives, different events in the school, charities we support, and the whole the house system in our school was completely rebranded, and we put that to the students, and we asked them, what they wanted their house names to be, and now they've designed the merch, and we put that through the student council as well, house merch they can buy, and what merch should be created first, and also where that money should go, which charities they want to support from the profits from selling that. So it's just been those kind of initiatives. It's just made the children key in that, rather than it being like one small group or one project or a group of teachers doing it. And that, particularly in an international school where you really want to try and develop community, because a lot of people are away from home, I think that's really important. They feel this connectedness, that we're in this together, and that everyone's voices are important.
Wow, it's such a lovely message to hear, and I hadn't thought of that extra, not challenge, but extra need for building community in a school where maybe people are moving in and out a bit more. It's a really...
And people moving at different times of the year as well. So, student council is just one of the things that, helped us to build that more connected, inclusive school community where, they do feel empowered to make a difference, whether they, just arrived in our school or they've been here for years.
Yeah, well, it seems like you've got so much energy for this, Louise. It's fantastic. Where does this come from? This is it like a social justice thing, or is it like a fairness, equality? Like, what's happened in your not in a bad way, but why do you believe this so strongly?
I don't know, but I think when you see something that works, and I think, you know, a lot of us that go into teaching, you know, particularly primary school teachers, you know, who aren't attached to a particular subject, you go in because you want to make a difference. You know, it is very much a vocation, and so when you can see something that you feel is really empowering to the students and does have impact, it's really exciting. I don't know quite where the kind of passion in particular comes from. I mean, for me personally, I was a very, very, very quiet, you know, student,
Yeah.
who probably would have really appreciated something like this, because I wouldn't have put myself forward to do, you know, the kind of role that the traditional school councils, you know, have, that elected student. I would never have put myself forward for something like that. So yeah, perhaps it's a little bit of that as well, that, you know, I really enjoy the fact that I can give students a chance to have their say, and they don't have to do so in a way that's, you know, threatening or scary, but they can still, you know, express themselves and use their voice.
Yeah, that's a really, really lovely message, I think, because it's not always the traditional standing up in front of a class or like getting elected to a role kind of leadership positions that are going to work for everyone, I think, and it's not how the world works as well. So it's great that you're opening
Yeah.
up those opportunities to more pupils and all pupils in your school as well. And also now you've been on your first podcast, Louise, so you've done a great job.
Thank you very much. No, I never thought I'd be invited for a podcast. I feel honoured. So thank you. Thank you for having me. And I guess it's an area I'm really excited to talk about. So I'm happy to have a space to do so.
Yeah, no, thanks, Louise. Honestly, big thanks. It's been great chatting with you. And I guess hearing about the inclusive and impactful approach that you've taken at your school, basically involving everybody, just sounds so amazing. And thank you so much for sharing what you're up to at British International School of Budapest. So thank you very much, Louise. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you'll have to come over to Budapest and experience your first international school and see us in action.
There's the invite I was hoping for. It's taken us half an hour, but we've got there. Thank you very much, Louise, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Bye-bye.